He did not lose his honor when he killed a king. He lost the ability to belong anywhere the moment he chose between two vows and watched both of them bleed. Jaime Lannister stood in the White Sword Tower with his armor still new, the cloak heavy on his shoulders, and listened as the doors of the Red Keep echoed with screams. Aerys Targaryen had ordered the city burned. Jaime wiped his blade and waited. When Eddard Stark entered and saw him seated there, from the pyromancers first, the command was plain. The damage came faster. If he obeyed, the people died. If he refused, his oath died. The meaning arrived only after the sword went through the king's back. Vows could contradict each other, and no one would forgive the choice made in the middle. The body cooled on the Iron Throne. Jaime wiped his blade and waited. When Eddard Stark entered and saw him seated there, the silence between them hardened. Jaime did not explain. No one asked. He was named Kingslayer instead of Knight. The damage settled immediately. The white cloak no longer meant purity. It meant suspicion. From that moment, every room would measure him. He returned to Casterly Rock and found his father's eyes already calculating the cost. Tywin Lannister did not praise the act. He redirected it. Jaime was pulled back toward House Lannister, away from the Brotherhood that had just rejected him. The loss was quiet. The Kingsguard was no longer a refuge. The meaning followed. If honor could not protect him, family would define him instead. Cersei was there, unchanged, waiting. Their bond had always been sealed in secrecy and mirrored need. When she welcomed him back into her orbit, it felt like relief. But the damage was structural. Loving her required concealment. Protecting her required lying. The meaning formed without ceremony. Intimacy could only survive if it remained hidden, and hiding would become his default posture toward the world. Years later, when Bran Stark climbed the tower at Winterfell and saw too much, Jaime reacted without hesitation. His hands pushed the boy into empty air. The event was brief. The loss was absolute. A child fell. The meaning arrived with sick clarity. Once he had crossed a line for love, every future line would feel thinner. Captured on the road, stripped of his sword and mocked as a legend with no proof, Jaime felt the erosion continue. Chains replaced armor. His name was spoken with contempt instead of fear. The damage was not physical yet. It was reputational. He learned that strength meant nothing once it could be removed. Identity, too, could be taken. When Brienne of Tarth guarded him through, she kept her vows openly, without irony. She endured ridicule without adjusting herself to it. When they were captured and Jaime's sword hand was cut off, the loss was immediate and irrevocable. Blood soaked the dirt. Pain collapsed his future into a single fact. The thing he had been most valued for was gone. As he screamed and bled, meaning pressed in. Without his hand, the Kingslayer had no shape. The identity he had worn to survive contempt was now unusable. The division inside him widened. He was neither the knight he had wanted to be. Brienne kept him alive. She carried him. She listened when fever loosened his restraint. In a bath at Harrenhal, Jaime finally spoke the truth of Aerys's command. He described the wildfire, the screams waiting to happen, the choice he made alone. The event was confession. The damage was exposure. For the first time, someone saw the whole act without interruption. The meaning followed slowly. Being understood required vulnerability, and vulnerability was a risk he had avoided by embracing mockery. Returned to King's Landing incomplete, Jaime found the city unchanged. Cersei did not meet his eyes the same way. His father saw limitation where once there had been utility. The white cloak still fit, but it no longer protected him from himself. The loss was subtle but persistent. He no longer knew which role he was supposed to play. Sent away from court, carrying orders that tested his remaining vows, Jaime tried to act differently. He released prisoners. He negotiated instead of threatening. Each act closed another door. The family he served began to look at him with uncertainty. The meaning gathered from these frictions, choosing restraint felt like betrayal to those who expected obedience. When he returned to Cersei, seeking recognition of what he had lost and learned, she refused to meet him where he stood. Her needs had not narrowed the way his had. The event was rejection. The damage was personal. The meaning cut deeper than any blade. Growth could separate those who had once survived by remaining the same. Jaime rode with the stump wrapped in aching, the road uneven beneath the horse, and felt how distance no longer simplified anything. Each mile away from Cersei did not loosen the bond. It exposed it. The damage was persistent. Separation did not free him. It clarified how much of his shape had been formed in reaction to her presence. In the Riverlands, castles opened their gates at his word, then hesitated when they saw his missing hand. He had learned that vows could conflict, love could demand destruction, and identity could fracture under pressure. None of these lessons offered peace. They only removed illusions. Jaime rode with the stump wrapped in aching, the road uneven beneath the horse, and felt how distance no longer simplified anything. Each mile away from Cersei did not loosen the bond. The damage was persistent. Separation did not free him. It clarified how much of his shape had been formed in reaction to her presence. In the Riverlands, castles opened their gates at his word, then hesitated when they saw his missing hand. He gave terms instead of threats. He kept his voice level. When he swore by the honor of a knight, men listened, surprised. The event was restraint practiced in public. The loss followed quietly. Fear stopped working for him. The meaning arrived with effort. Authority gained through cruelty vanished once cruelty was refused, and nothing replaced it immediately. At Riverrun, he stood before Edmure Tully and spoke of siege and starvation without raising his voice. The child inside the castle became leverage he named but did not use. When the gates opened, it was not victory that settled in him. It was fatigue. He learned that doing less damage still cost something. Mercy did not erase consequence. It only changed its texture. He sent Brienne away with a sword forged from his father's steel. The blade left his hand and became a promise fulfilled. The event was release. The loss was relational. He let go of the one person who had seen him without reduction. The meaning followed reluctantly. Choosing to keep an oath could mean choosing absence. Back in King's Landing, the city pressed in again. Cersei met him with urgency sharpened into desperation. When she asked him to stand with her against everyone, the words closed around his chest. He did not answer as she needed. The event was refusal spoken plainly. The damage was immediate. Their shared language failed. The meaning cut clean. Love that demanded blindness would not survive sight. Imprisoned for disobedience, he sat in the dark and counted the cost. The white cloak no longer offered shelter. The family name no longer granted immunity. The loss was structural. He had removed himself from the systems that once defined him. The meaning emerged slowly. Choosing differently did not place him somewhere new. It placed him nowhere. Freed, he moved through the city like a guest whose welcome had expired. When Brienne returned and spoke of Sansa Stark, of an oath still alive, he followed without hesitation. The event was departure. The damage was final. He abandoned the last position that tied him to the old version of himself. The meaning formed in motion. Purpose could exist outside approval. In the north, snow swallowed sound and erased banners. Jaime found Cersei where fear had stripped her of certainty. He held her as walls fell. The loss was constant. He was no longer exceptional. The meaning took hold through repetition. Worth could be measured by endurance rather than recognition. When the dead came, he stood his ground beside those who had once despised him. There was no audience. No names were corrected. Survival itself became the only witness. The damage was cumulative. Each strike confirmed how little was left of the man who had sat on the Iron Throne in defiance. The meaning arrived with clarity. Being present was not redemption, but it was alignment. After, the world narrowed again. News from the south reached him and reopened old wounds. He found Cersei where fear had stripped her of certainty. He held her as walls fell. The event was the message. The damage followed inside him. Two paths reopened that could not merge. The meaning surfaced with pain. Division was not temporary. It was his condition. He left Brienne without explanation that could satisfy. Words failed. The road took him back toward the woman who had formed him and against the growth that had changed him. The loss was visible in his posture. He walked toward the familiar harm because it was familiar. The meaning hardened as he went. Understanding a truth does not prevent repetition. In King's Landing, the city collapsed around them. Jaime found Cersei where fear had stripped her of certainty. He held her as walls fell. The event was reunion under ruin. The damage was terminal. He returned not as protector or judge, but as witness. The meaning arrived without comfort. Division does not resolve. It only ends. He died there, not as kingslayer or knight, but as a man whose life had been shaped by incompatible vows held too long. The loss was complete. Only then did the shape of his journey settle. He had always been divided, not between good and evil, but between roles that demanded total allegiance. He learned too late that choosing between them did not heal the fracture. It